Um, Hello, everybody. How's it going? Um, Marketing was originally intended to be focused on developers, but its kind of advice and pointers will help you across the stream. Before I get into some applicable, really good advice that you can just take away today and start using, I really wanted to give you a kind of brutal look at the market, because you need to know what you get into. You need to look out there now. And I want to really give away um, three major points from this talk. One, things that you can do, start doing, go home today and start doing that will really affect your game launch. Two, help inform your future development decisions, because you need to make design decisions and know what to put in your game, out of your game based on marketplace and if it's successful. And three, really kind of not pat you on the back, but give you a realistic look at what you're up against when it comes to promoting and selling the game. It's really tough. But before I get into that, I should tell you about me. My name is Michael. I am CEO and co-founder of Vicarious. We are an award-winning agency that don't just do PR, but we do agencies. So we do everything from advertising, social media management, etc. I used to be a journalist. I was a video and news editor of Gamers.com. I was also a terrible, terrible YouTuber that thought, I'll do YouTube videos and get rich. So that's the short version of me. If you want to ask more questions about that at the end. So before we get into specifics, we really need to know what is PR marketing. Now, PR and marketing is very different industry to industry. So you're going to be essentially doing it with video games. Video games has a fairly specific definition. It's not technically correct, but it's basically what we use for our industry. So PR in video games is essentially media relations, right? So that's PR. And marketing in video games is pretty much everything that you pay for that is not free, right? So to give you an idea, all PR is marketing, but not all marketing is PR. Okay? PR is just a branch of marketing, but it is something whereby PR, you hire yourself, or you hire an employee, or you hire an agency, and they will go and conduct influence outreach, they will conduct media relations with journalists on your behalf, and essentially try and get you coverage. Whereas marketing is sponsored videos, banner advertisements, social media, acquisition campaigns. So those are the basic definitions. So when I talk PR or marketing, so section one, this is the most brutal section, and it's going to make a lot of you quite student by the end of it, because you're going to have to look at go out. So it's going to basically give you an idea of what your opinions are, depending on what platform you're going for, and depending on what game you're on. So all of those things are pretty instrumental in how big your audience size is. So this here is the global games market per device and segment on year-on-year growth. So mobile is absolutely skyrocketed, and it's actually become, within a decade, it's gone from the smallest market to the largest, all within that time. There's still the other industries, including PC, console, there's still double figures, billion huge, but mobile is absolutely just simply because it's more accessible. So everyone's got a mobile. Not everyone can afford a high-end gaming PC. So you have to understand that, because if you're building a mobile game, for example, it's very saturated, and you're going to be prepared against a large number of competition. And the same goes for every single industry in there, but you have to understand that the audience size varies dramatically depending on which platform. So to give you some nice little depressing statistics, on average, around 40 games release on Steam a day. That's a lot of games. Now, granted, a lot of those are absolute trash that no one's ever going to play, and it's absolute shovelware. But even if you took all those away, you're still against 5 to 10 games that are worthy of being on it, right? So you need to be prepared to go against at least 10 games when you launch. Doesn't matter when you launch now. Back in the day, 5, 10 years ago, you could really pick a day and just avoid everything. And it was really nice to do that. And it was also exclusive, really straightforward. But now, no matter when you launch, you're going to be up against competition. Now, some of that competition is going to be different depending on what game you're producing. You don't want to go in the middle of October and go up against Assassin's Creed, right? That's just crazy. But it doesn't matter when you launch, what year, what day, you're going to be up against some stiff competition. So yeah, you're expecting that and prepared for that, which is why PR marketing is now more crucial than ever, right? So PR professionals as well, we're super high demand. It's kind of gone a weird way. So what we had 5 years ago was, well, even longer than that, when indie development first started, you had a lot of experienced developers create their own studios because they didn't, right? And then what happened was journalists, influencers loved talking directly to those developers because they got out the PR guy that was emailing them every day, and so they loved that. But now what's happened is you have 1,000 games plus this year alone releasing on Steam. Every single one of those is emailing a journalist, and so journalists are getting 500 plus emails a day. And so what's happened now is the shift back to PR and marketing agencies in fact the journalists first, because they get so much that they know if it's coming from an agency, it's kind of in the screen. So they know that they've got that little bit of agency. Whereas developers where Facebook is going to be emailing, not knowing good practice, and potentially emailing successfully, which so once you've launched your game, the average game sales on Steam particularly sells around 2,000. That's it. So unless you're like an average kid, you need to have a business plan that is prepared for you to make around maybe 20,000. If you're not prepared, like your business can't survive, you need to rethink your strategy. Because if you are building a business around the idea that you're going to have a massive hit, that is not the way to happen. And you have to be extremely prepared for that, because what I don't want to see anymore is a bunch of developers telling each other that they can do it. It's all going to be okay, and then some guy mortgaging their house on the platform. Okay? It's not good. Okay? Building games and not curing cancer here. Okay? So please be prepared to, have a bad launch, right? Because if you're prepared, it means it's not going to come as a shock. It's not going to, ruin your life. It's not going to be the end of the world. And, a bad launch is not the end of the world anyway, especially in today's market. But you need to be prepared. Right? Okay, so free-to-play, early access, those are things I get asked about all the time by developers trying to make a game. They're not going anywhere anytime soon, simply because they dominate the market, particularly free-to-play, especially mobile devices and stuff. People just want to be able to download. So bear that in mind when you are doing your product strategy. That's not to say that you should do a free-to-play game. It's not to say you should do early access. It is to say that you need to bear that in mind as a viable strategy for user acquisition. If your game supports the idea of free-to-play, maybe do it. It just depends. You have to make that judgment, right? And you have to get consultation. Is this viable if I do this? Is this viable if I do early access? Early access can be a great tool, right? Especially for community building and getting that feedback and getting a little bit of income, right? But it is also classed as a full launch in terms of media attention. So you don't want to hit early access and just spin. So bear that in mind. Going global is super important now. This is one thing that I really try and teach developers a lot of. Because a lot of people think, okay, so just release in English and we'll be okay. And it's not the case anymore. It really isn't. I mean, and you're cutting yourself off from such a large market by doing that. And localization, in terms of price point now, is pretty cheap compared to what it used to be. You can get localization done, especially if your game doesn't have a lot of text. That's super cheap. So why not release 9 languages and open the market? You know, you can't sit there and say, oh well, it's just North America, just North America, or you're really struggling. And you know, for example, that we had a game a while back that really didn't do well in North America. It was a massive hit in Eastern Europe, massive, and pretty much 90% of their sales all was driven from Eastern Europe. If they hadn't localized that, they wouldn't have got that. So bear that in mind. And the landscape is changing all the time. You know, what worked 2 years ago does not work now. And publishers are changing too, right? There was a time where publishers were very, and some publishers, but there was a time that publishers were very exclusive. So you would go in and go, I'm making a game, and they go, okay, well, I'm going to take 60% of your revenue, I'm going to take your IP, and you basically win. That is not the case. If you have a good game, and you have a really good concept, and you have a really good strategy, you can go to a lot of independent developers and basically get a really good deal whereby you can basically retain everything except a slight revenue share, and they pay for all marketing. It's not to say that works for everybody, and you should research on if you want to explore that option. But you know, it's an option more so now than it was, and it's definitely less exposed. So this is going to give you a look in terms of media relations. It's going to give you a look at the state of media. What the graph here shows. The purple line is the total number of games articles in 2017. Okay. The red line is the amount of those articles that were games that weren't. So what you can see there is that you get to around June, July, big old spike. You get similar with Christmas time, fall period. Again. Now, what's fairly consistent throughout this graph is the amount of articles that come out on the top 20 games. Okay, so it's fairly consistent in the fact that top 20 games, approximately 30 to 40%, sometimes higher in peak season, is going to be solely about these Assassin's Creed games. Right? You've got no chance. Okay, and I'll give you a perfect example. When things like No Man's Sky and Overwatch came out, you go to particularly Fortnite nightmare. If you go to any given website that you like GameSpot, whatever it is, you look at a really busy day when, like, you know, Fortnite's just announced a new patch, right? I can guarantee you, of those featured page articles, 4 out of 6 will be about that. So you're competing to the spot, right? That's a tough challenge to do, right? And so you need to be aware that, you know, 60 to 70% of those games articles, you're competing with everybody else, right? You're not going to be in, unless you're like, you know, an outlier, you've got something really special. You're going to be competing with a lot of other people, or basically about half the articles. Okay. So, before you even start any PR marketing, I want you to think about this. Who you are, what your product is, okay? Because the amount of people who come to me and they say, really like PR marketing, and I go, what is it? And I say, okay, so what's your selling point? Well, it's a thing that platform you don't know. You need to think about that from day one, okay? Because having a good branding strategy will ultimately save you so much hassle down the line. Without this, you cannot do anything else. It is the first thing that we do with developers, and it literally will define anything that you do in terms of PR and marketing. It will define how you promote the game to journalists. It will define what kind of social media posts you do. It will define what kind of advertising you do. It will define everything. So ask yourself this: who you are, what does your company stand for, what products do you make, right? What's your style? Now, a lot of companies and a lot of, if you think about some of your favorite companies, a lot of them have a distinct style. That's not to say that that style is, always has to be the same thing. Some companies, like Telltale, for example, all right, Telltale had a very distinct style, right? Super important to do that. And it doesn't have to be, an art style or a certain storytelling way. It can just be that you make quality. That's okay too. That's fine. And you have to define your voice as well. So what's your key messaging? What is it that you want to get across to your customers? What are you about? What is your product about? Those are super questions. And they sound kind of hard to do, but if you just take a minute to go talk to people about your game, it doesn't have to be at a convention. It can just be a group of friends, right? Talk to people about your game. And if they say, I want to know more, you're probably on the right track, right? If they kind of look at you like, oh, okay, try again. So I'll give you some examples of the style, okay? I chose Hi-Rez and Twitchfire because obviously they're local. So if you think about Hi-Rez, free-to-play games, right? That's all they do, free-to-play games. And often those games will have a colourful art style and they'll focus on class-based combat, like Paladins. Tripwire, FPS shooters. Paradox, they do RTS, RPG, 4X. They often focus on sci-fi, fantasy games. And EA Sports. That's a perfect example, right? It's EA Sports. They've defined themselves as, we make the best sports games, and that's it. That's all they do. And that's great, because when you're playing something from EA Sports, you know exactly what it is. You don't even have to know if it's FIFA or Madden. You just know that it's going to have that quality. So really think about where you want to go, okay? You don't necessarily have to try multiple different things. If you like a certain genre, that's great, and that can work, right? But you have to refine that, and that's super important. So how do you define your game? This is the fun part, and this is the part where you get to do lots and lots of work and lots of research. And it's the part that is probably one of the most important things. Prep work in PR and marketing is often the most important thing that you can do. It's super, super important, and I cannot stress that enough to do this step properly, because if you do not do this step properly, everything else after will suffer. So one of the first things I do is I do a brand analysis, which takes a look at the messaging, like we talked about, the style, who you are, what you want to get across, etc., etc. Do you have a unified identity, right? Because it's no good saying, right, my website is designed one way, but my social media is designed another way. And if you have, and a lot of people do this, don't describe your game differently on each different thing, okay? One voice, super important, right? Because it gets confusing if you describe your game in different ways to different places. Nobody knows what it is anymore. Then you do a market analysis. A market analysis is really straightforward. You look at who your target audience is, what the marketplace is, who's buying games, what's going on, and so you can really understand, what the trends are in the market, where everything's shifting. SWOT your company. SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunity, and threats. The SWOT analysis is really good, and it's a good way to kind of take yourself and your game under a microscope and look at it objectively. So you want to look at what the strengths are of your game, what are the weaknesses of your game, what are the opportunities. So, for example, if you're releasing in April and you've done your research and you see that there's no other, if you're making an RPG and there's no other RPGs coming out in April, that's an opportunity there, right? And you do your threats. Research your audience. Competitor analysis. So competitor analysis, straightforward. Look at other people, what they're doing. Don't copy what they're doing, please. That's not what that's for. It's just to give you an idea of what else is going on. Research your audience is super crucial. And it's something that developers and some marketing people don't really understand. So an audience and a demographic are not the same. A lot of times I'll speak to a developer and I'll say, who are your target audience? And they'll go, men 18 to 45. It's not an audience. It's a demographic. Okay, your audience is someone. Okay, so let's take men 18 to 45. What do they like? What do they do? What kind of games do they play? Right? And so what you actually want is men 18 to 45 who play RPGs and also frequently visit Facebook, etc., etc. The clarity that you get from researching your audience can really define your messaging, your PR, and your marketing. Because the more that you can target your audience, the less money that you spend, right? And the more success you have. And I'll give you a perfect example of this. There was a Kickstarter a couple of years ago, and I won't mention the name. There was a Kickstarter a couple of years ago who did not understand who their audience was. And so what they did is they bought up a bunch of banner space on all the big major websites, spent thousands of dollars, and got no clicks. And the reason is that their target audience was children ages 13 to 18. And no children ages 13 to 18 read GameSpot or IGN, right? They go on YouTube and Instagram. And so they wasted a bunch of money because they did not understand who their audience was. And that's super important. PR consult. People like me love talking to people like you for free. It's fun. We get ideas, you get ideas, and I can quickly take a look at your messaging, your PR strategy, your marketing strategy, and give you helpful tips. And it's not a problem, right? So don't be afraid to even, because I know some developers, they don't want to email us because we're busy, or they're afraid that we're going to sell them something. Okay, most PR companies, especially the indie-friendly ones, we really do want to help the industry, and a lot of the time we'll do consults and we'll sit with developers for like hours at a time, and help you, understand if there's any of these things that you struggle with, we can help you with those. And a lot of people just ask, and most of the time we'll say yes. Like I say, elevator pitch and USP creation is super important, right? You need to be able to explain your game in the time that it takes for me to go to one floor to the next in an elevator, right? And it has to be super catchy. I have to basically understand what your game is, and envision it in my head in a sentence or two. And that is going to be crucial to everything that you do, especially if you go to conventions and you're trying to explain what that is. If you've really nailed that down, people are like, oh yeah, I get it, that's cool, right? And I always do the hook and reel, right? So a lot of people do this differently, but I do it my way because it's better. So procedural generation is not a hook, okay? RTS is not a hook. There's lots of games that do procedural generation. There's lots of RTSs. Nobody cares, okay? Pick out something that your game does unique. That's your hook, right? And then the reel is RTS procedural generation, right? That's the afterthought. I want to know what makes you unique. So that is your hook. And try it out. The best thing that you can do is test it out. That's the best thing you do, because you get face-to-face reactions with people and you can see it in their eyes and you can tell when people are lying to you, right? So it's super easy to just send an email and go, oh, well, I can measure the open rate and stuff like that. You don't want to do that. Before you even send any emails, before you even do any marketing, you want to really nail this down. So go to conventions, get your friends, go get your mom, doesn't matter, and really explain your elevator pitch to her and look at the reaction, right? Do they want more? Are they confused, right? And then rework it, because nailing this down is super important. And do your research, on all of this. All of this is research, and it is one of the most important steps. This is the one I love. Get out of your head, all right? Developers are great, creative, wonderful people, but think very binary sometimes, right? Especially any of you programmers. Okay, oh yeah, there you go. Okay. PR and marketing is not programming, okay? And you cannot treat it like programming. It is super important to get out of your own head and stop looking at your game how you look at it as someone who creates it. You need to develop empathy in a way that you can put yourself in other people's shoes, imagine what their life is like, and then imagine how they will look at your product. And this is what marketers are trained to do, right? Which is why we get paid money. But you've got to understand that developers think like developers, marketers think like marketers, and we don't always get it right either, right? We're not some kind of like holier than thou. We all hold all the answers, right? We're doing the same thing as you do. We just think differently. And customers think like customers, right? And what you think is really cool, customer might not think is really cool. Okay. So learn to analyze your product in a way that puts you in someone else's shoes, right? So you're a developer, you work 60 hours a week and you program in a way, you type in and you're thinking logically and you're going forward and forward. Think about the guy who works in the coal mine 40 hours a week, who's got 5 kids, and he comes home and he's really tired, right? Does he care that you put, you know, X in, right? What is he looking for? What kind of value is that person looking for? And these are all the things that you need to think about when going forward with not only game design, but with your marketing and PR, right? Because the ability to look at your product from different points of view will really help inform you and shape not only the marketing, but the game design itself. Because if you can look at it from different perspectives, it really just helps stop feature creep really quick. Because you're like, do I need this? Like, does anybody care that this is like an extra thing that I added? Probably not. And that'll save you development time, and ultimately you can push to launch faster. Okay, so let's get on to the helpful or not so helpful tips, maybe. I don't know. So before you start any PR in particular, it is really super important to understand what your mission is, right? So what do you want to achieve? Because some of you out here want to achieve sales. Some of you don't. And it's super important to understand the distinction, right? Do you want to be an enthusiast games developer who makes just art and what they want to make? Or do you want a games company that makes millions of dollars, right? The two are very, very different. And you have to understand the differences in order to proceed forward, right? So, for example, if you're a games developer and what you're doing is building your first game and then you want to go get a job at Bungie, which I literally had a developer do that, he's now lead designer of Bungie, right? Because he made a game and then he did a little bit of PR in the game and then he got himself a nice job, right? Whereas other developers want to sell and they want to make lots of money and a self-sustaining business. So it's really important to understand what your mission is. So whether it's launching a game, crowdfund, drive sales, business, customer acquisition, community build, or educate an audience, right? And people don't think about this a lot, but if you're making a game that's very, very obscure and is very, very strange and a bit weird, it's super important to educate the audience on what it is, because they might look at it and go, oh, I don't know, and pass, right? So all of those are great goals, but all of those goals will take different paths. Because, cookie cutter PR and cookie cutter marketing doesn't work anymore. It is not one size fits all. You have to really develop your own strategy. So let's go with what PR does. PR does lots of things. These are basically the main ones, but there are others. Media articles, obviously. It's always nice to have your game written about. Makes you feel all warm and tingly inside. Builds customer confidence. And this is an important one, right? So when particularly PC gamers, they have a habit of researching you before they buy because they like to make informed purchasing decisions. So it is really helpful when you launch on Steam, for example, to have articles written about you when they Google you, because if they Google you and don't see anything, that can often be a problem. Customer acquisition. Now, this is something that me and other PR people disagree on. I think there are easy ways to track customer acquisition through PR, right? Some companies don't do good quantifiable data. I think that's wrong. I don't think that's very valuable in the industry. I really love data and stats, and I love to see when I do a campaign who's looking at it, right? Who's clicking it? How many people are going to get sales off this? And there are ways to do that, and some people don't do it, and I don't know why they don't do it, but I think there are ways to track sales based on a PR campaign. Legitimacy and credibility is super important. Like I said, with so many emails coming into journalists now, they're clicking on the PR people's journalists because we've pre-screened them already, and they know they're not going to send them some puzzle platformer that is a Unity asset flip. Brand awareness is also a thing that PR does. Lead generation, product education, And PR itself can help define your brand, because often you can, even with a PR professional, you can sit there and come up with a strategy and key messaging, and then you go to market, and then people are like, "What?" And so you have to pivot, and pivoting is super important in marketing, right? Because marketing and PR, all it is scientific method. It's basically a giant social debug, in the sense that once you put something else, you see the reaction, right? If it doesn't go your way, then you change the variables until you get the thing that you want. And that's basically all that is. It's a scientific method. If first you don't succeed, try again until it sticks. And this is what marketing does, right? Marketing is very specific in what it does. It is mostly about customer acquisition, okay? And it is the strongest form of customer acquisition there is. You know, you've been on Facebook, Twitter, you see the ads, right? The mobile game ads that you flick through. It is the strongest way. But marketing also does a couple of other things that people don't often think about. Influence is a good one, right? As much as journalists like to say that they are impartial and, above all reproach, it's not necessarily true. If you are marketing on their website and you've got banner ads on their website, they're going to take notice of that, right? It doesn't mean that they're going to be nice to you. It just means that they care. So, excuse me, that's super important. Brand building really does help that, right? Just because you don't get a massive click-through rate, it doesn't mean that it doesn't help people think about your game. So here's a couple of things marketing PR won't do. They won't make a bad game good. Period. If your game is bad, your game is bad. Tough luck. That's the reality of the situation. I can't create something out of nothing. Okay, you've got to think about PR and marketing like a multiplier. If your game is good, then PR and marketing will multiply that good, right? If your game is bad, there's nothing we can do. Okay, the quality of the product supersedes everything else, everything. So which is why PR agencies choose their clients very carefully, because we don't want something terrible. It doesn't guarantee, even if your game is good, that it will be commercially successful. It's true, okay? Brutally honest. Just because I'm good at my job does not mean I can make you a millionaire. It doesn't. It doesn't mean, it doesn't guarantee that I will get you 10 sales. That's the reality of the market. There are many, many games who went with many very, very good professional people and did not sell. Right? There's app store developers who've been on the front page of Apple and got feature placements, didn't get downloads. And that's the reality of the situation. It is always a gamble, regardless, right? But the only way to succeed is to take that gamble. And we don't lie, as much as people like to say that we do. Video game PR people are not the same as like politicians PR people. Okay, we do not lie, because in this industry, like with developers, right, reputation is everything. And PR people want their reputation, because without that reputation, journalists don't listen to us, and we're out of a job. So it is super important that credibility and honesty is paramount. Okay, so let's get into the good stuff. I am not going to lie to you. It's tough out there, right? And you have to make very tough choices as an indie developer and as you're developing your game. So you need to choose your hero. Who's your hero going to be? Okay, the first one is yourself, right? Straight up DIY. There are a bunch of pros and cons to each path that you choose, but it's important to be aware of going in, right? So if you choose DIY, financially it's going to be the cheapest option, right? All you need is a MailChimp account and you're solid, right? And you can just pay for any marketing ads that you do yourself, straight up. It can be very satisfying for you if you do it correctly. Most people don't, but if you do it correctly, it can be very rewarding. It can help you network and build good connections, because if a journalist likes your game, you get to know that journalist, then you've got a journalist for life, right? And no one knows your game better than you at the end of the day. The cons to that are, it is a huge time sink, okay? And I don't mean just a little time sink, it is gigantic. To do marketing and PR correctly is a full-time job. And understand that, right? You can't half-ass this stuff, because if you do, everybody knows and nobody cares, right? So understand what kind of time you're going to be investing at the same time as you're making a game, right? So if DIY is your only option, be prepared to finish your game first and then do PR for 6 months. Because if you don't, you're going to really struggle. You can hire an employee. This one also has pros and cons. So the pros are, it's not a huge time sink for you, but it's a huge wallet sink. Like a good marketing professional on your team is going to set you back a fair bit. And it's going to set you back up more than an agency would, likely, because you have to pay salary, you have to pay payroll tax, etc., etc. But it can be great if you've got the resources and capability to do this. Having someone there in your team internally all the time can work wonders because they're going to know the product as good as you do, and they're going to have the benefits of doing stuff full time, and you can get really great results that way. But you know it comes with you've got to project manage them, you've got to make sure they're doing what they're doing. You've got to hope that you hire well, and that you've got people who actually know what they're doing and didn't just lie on their resume. Super important. And then you can choose an agency like mine, or not mine. I don't mind. It's often it's kind of a midway between DIY and hiring an employee, right? So financially, it's going to set you back a fair bit depending on which agency you choose, but it can be an easy way to get expertise and great results for a midway. Um, Again, agencies really do add credibility and legitimacy to your game, especially in the media front of things. But the downside is we can be expensive. We don't do things for free. We have mouths to feed and employees to pay, and not all agencies are created equal. Okay, there are good agencies, and I can recommend a few afterwards if you would like. And there are also not so great ones, particularly in price and service. Some agencies like mine will try and put customer service first. So we're always there. If you call us, we pick up. If you email us, we email you back within half an hour. We try and be on top of things. But there are some who will ignore you for weeks on end. So choose carefully. So let's get into some really quick stuff, and I'll move on, and we'll get some questions. So this is how you pitch, right? Pitching is not a press release. Pitching is a direct email. Less is more, right? You don't harass journalists, please. Target, and don't just spray and pray. Don't just grab an email list of a bunch of journalists and just hope that one of them likes your game. Read what they do. Target specifically, right? Get to know the journalist before you even contact them. Oh, look, this journalist really likes this genre and consistently writes about this genre. I'm making this genre. Let's connect, right? Less is more in that way. It's better to target 15 journalists who you know are going to really like the game that you're making than 100 journalists who will not care. Because all that will happen in the end is that you will email all of these journalists who don't care, and then they will hit spam. And then the next time you are making a game that they do care about, you're in the spam filter. And that's that. So it's super important to really nail down the target of who you're going to be emailing. Now, this here is probably the thing that you want to take a picture of. This is exactly how you should format your email. Okay? And we use the AIDA model for this. AIDA model is very simple. Attention, interest, desire, and action. Okay? Attention, you grab the person's attention, which is usually the email subject because you kind of need them to open the email, right? So you want to make that super catchy, super interesting. Don't lead with, this is XCOM meets Brawlhalla. Don't do that, okay? Nobody cares. There are millions of games who go, this is like XCOM. Don't do that. Lead with your unique selling point, which is why it's so important, because that thing will literally define everything. Okay, so grab their attention. So you've grabbed their attention, fantastic. They've opened the email. Now here's the interest, right? So you want to start with hello, name, right? And it's hopefully a journalist you've actually researched. And then you do like a paragraph, which is going to be your unique selling proposition, your hook and reel. It's going to be a little intro, and this game is this, right? So first paragraph, they know what the game is straight away. And then you want to go with desire, right? So the desire is basically, the way I like to describe it is, it's the thing after you've got my attention, okay, and I'm like, what is that? And then I see something like, oh, that's cool, right? That's the, oh, that's cool. And you usually want that to be a trailer. If you don't have a trailer, use like a really good key piece of art. Those can work really well. But a trailer is usually preferred just because it gives a really all-in-one look at what your product is. And then you can add additional info after that. I wouldn't make it more than 1 or 2 paragraphs. 1 if you can manage it. Don't make it more than 2 though. No one wants to read a wall of text. It's boring. They're under severe time pressure. They've got 9 articles to write that day. Don't make them work for it, okay? If they want to know more, they will ask. Keep it short. Keep it sweet. Keep it to the point. And then the action, right? So you want to finish it off with straightforward, here's a link to a press kit. Here's a link to a website. Here's a link to the Steam page. Here's all the information that you'll ever need, ever. There you go, right? And then done. And that's your basic format of how to pitch to a journalist, right? It does not guarantee you success. It is just the best all-round format. But again, preparation, targeting, making sure that your brand strategy is good are all keys to making this here work. This will not work without any of those things. So this is a case study of one that we did pitching for. This is a little game called Death Coming. Death Coming was a little indie game that came out of China. It was a puzzle game, right? And I looked at it, and everybody else looked at it, including some leading professionals, and said, this game is never going to sell because it's a puzzle game. Puzzle games don't sell that well. And so I said, I'll take it. And what we did was, we did the steps that I talked about. We looked at what makes the game unique. Well, puzzle games aren't unique. What makes the game unique is the fact that you play as a Grim Reaper, right? You play as a Grim Reaper, and your job is literally, if any of you've seen the Final Destination films, you literally kill people via accidents. So it's kind of like not direct. And that's what you do in the game. And so that's how we pitched it. Literally play the Reaper, kill people through accidents. Job done, right? And that's that. And that pitch led to over 450 media articles. We got featured in pretty much every major top tier website. We had over 2 million YouTube views. And most importantly for the developers, 100,000 in sales in the first month. That's that, right? That's the power of getting your brand strategy right. Because if I'd have turned around and said, hey, this is a puzzle platform, that's it, done. No journalist wants to listen to that, right? I didn't even mention what type of game it was. I didn't mention anything. All I said was, this is what you do in this game, right? And that was interesting enough for them to care, right? If I had just been like really analytical about it, no one would care. Press releases 101. Okay. Press releases are not like candy, right? You shouldn't just be throwing them out there and hoping for the best. They are not dead. People like to say that press releases are dead. I don't know why people say that. They are actually super useful and super important. And journalists, as much as journalists like to be cool and be like, I don't read press releases, yeah, they do. Don't listen to that. When you're writing a press release, the 3 C's are super important: clear, concise, and correct. Okay? So be clear, be short. Do not write an essay. Nobody wants to read that. Journalists want to be able to look at a press release, pick out what the story is, and then go, article done. Right? That's all they want to do. They don't want to sit there and listen to you waffle on about how great you are or how you developed your game, all that thing. 3 to 4 paragraphs, that's it. Don't spam. Oh, and be correct. The amount of people who send out press releases with like really bad grammar and spelling mistakes is beyond belief. Please don't do that, because that, as soon as you have a spelling mistake in like the header of a press release, that isn't getting read. Save them for only major announcements, okay? So launch, first trailer, announcement, maybe a release date announcement, but save them for like the big things. Don't be like, today we made a thing in Unity and we added new assets. That's not news. It has to be newsworthy for anybody to care. Don't spam and don't self-promote. Nobody wants to listen to you talk about yourself. It's not entertaining. It's not interesting. And please, again, don't spam anybody. It's not good. Have all the other irrelevant info and links within the press release. Okay, do not make a journalist do extra work, because as soon as you do that, they're not going to be interested because they're under tight deadlines. Okay, so make sure that at the bottom of a press release is like press kit, everything like that. So what you should be doing from the start of development. This one is like super key. Mailing list, dev blog. Force yourself to do it, people. It's okay. I know it sucks and you don't like talking about what you're doing or you feel uncomfortable, but get it done, because that way you have the ability to show what you're doing to your customers, and then you can build a following. Do social media. If you're a really small team or you're a one-man team, please still do it. And if you're really time constrained, 2 posts a week. That's it, right? 2 posts a week is better than nothing. And so make sure to do that. And plan for marketing, okay? Put aside a budget. And no, that's not possible all of the time, particularly for really, really small studios who are bootstrapped. I know that's not a thing that is possible, but if you can, and I know some people are just running on their savings, but if you can, this is the most important part, apart from actually making a good game, okay? And one doesn't work without the other. So if you want to actually make this your business and you want to make this a long-term thing, you have to think about marketing and PR. And if you're going, whether you're going to do it yourself or hire an agency, plan from the start to budget an amount of money to put towards it, if you can. Speaking of social media, I'm going to give you quick yeses and nos. All right, quick yeses and nos, straightforward. Okay, do have a unified social media look. Use resources like Canva if you need. If you're not great at art or something like that, you can just go on the website Canva and it will literally create social media headers and everything for you with like whatever you've got going. Post fairly regularly. Use the 80-20 rule. The 80-20 rule is 80% entertainment, 20% self-promoting. Okay, don't be posting 2 times a week saying go like me on Steam. All right, do something fun. Post a meme. Post a GIF. Post a video. It doesn't matter. Use the 80-20 rule. Twice a week is fine for those pressed for time. Engage and interact with followers and other indie studios as much as possible, right? Because it's a great, if you can make friends with a bunch of other indie studios, you can all promote each other, right? It's a great way to do that. Enforce rules and create a positive, friendly community. Okay, it's super important that you create a community around your game that is going to be welcoming to others and not going to be toxic. And sometimes you have to do like really hard stuff, like kick people out and ban people, which may make you feel uncomfortable because you don't like confrontation, but it is necessary for the well-being of your game. Don't be rude, risky, or outright inflammatory. Okay, it's not great. Please don't do that on social media. Don't knee-jerk respond to negativity or criticisms. If your game launches and you get a bad review, please don't call them an asshole or something like that. And please don't, like, on a Steam review, report it as spam. That stuff is not great. And that turns literally something that's not very important into, like, something that all of those drama-filled YouTubers will then screenshot for eternity, and that's your career over. So don't do that. Avoid sharing political opinions on official pages. It's not the place for it. Keep to yourself. And don't shut down, report, or ban criticism unless it's like hurting others, right? Please avoid doing that. So if you're developing a new IP and it's not a franchise or anything like that, it's a great place to start, right? So you've got the bottom tier of the pyramid, small bloggers, small influencers, social media, and dev blog. That's where you should be starting, right? And as you move up, and as you gain momentum, and as you go through development, do events, trailers, mailing list. As you go up and you get closer to launch, PR campaign, influencer campaign, and then, hopefully, if all goes well, you'll eventually get top tier media and influencers if you're lucky. So let's get through to the summary, okay? The ideal PR and marketing recipe is a little bit of everything, right? Now, depending on what game you have, it's going to be more or less of each one, right? Because some games are just not suited for PR. So the ideal thing is a little bit of media relations, a little bit of influencer, a little bit of advertising, community building, all together make a nice stew. Is PR right for you, though? Not all games are sexy, okay? And they're not. Some journalists don't care about the match 3 that you're making, all right? Which is, like I say, maybe you want to focus your efforts on advertising versus PR, depending on what game you want and what media like. There is no one way for commercial success here. right? What worked for Limbo will not work now. And so please avoid looking at other games and going, I'll do that, because it probably won't work. Some games are not right for long-term PR, but they're perfect for influencer campaigns. Some games are actually good for PR, but not good for long-term. So a lot of games will like 6 months to a year of PR before they launch, right? But some games can just do a month, right, and be really successful. It just depends on how much content and how much PR ammunition your game gives PR professional. Quickly must bust some myths. If you build it, will it come does not apply anymore. Just because you have a great game doesn't mean anybody cares or knows about it. So don't be under that illusion. GameX did well 2 years ago, so mine will. Not true. The same strategy works for everyone. Not true. Price doesn't matter. Price does matter, and price can tell a customer a lot about your game, right? If your game is $5, statistically speaking, on Steam, that will be passed over by a lot of people thinking it's a hot pile of garbage. Anything $15 and up is usually, and again, this comes with a downside though. But anything $15 or up is usually considered by a customer to be quality. So think about your price very carefully because it affects how people perceive your product. But the downside of that is if you price your game at $20, people expect a certain quality, and if you don't meet that quality, you're going to suffer for it. So be aware. Price really does matter. Don't be thinking that, oh, I'll just put it cheap and that'll work. It might not. People might just think, oh, Unity flip, let's go. My launch went bad, so it's all over. Again, not true. There are ways to recover and promote long-term success if it's worth it, right? If the game is worth it. Don't just like try and do a recovery effort for any old thing. Like you have to really believe that the long-term success of this is worth it. And I need giant budgets in marketing to do marketing and PR. That's not true. Don't do that. People can do things for fairly cheap now. When to start your marketing and PR, social media posts, mailing lists, etc. Day one. PR varies from game to game. Make sure you consult PR executives and stuff to really understand when you should be starting your PR. Usually, depending on the game, 6 months to a year is a great time. But it depends on what your game is and how much stuff you've got to talk about. Don't start 2 weeks before launch. The amount of developers come to me and say, I'm launching next week, can you help me out? No, I can't, it's too late, right? You wouldn't ask an artist to do something in 10 seconds that takes 10 minutes, right? You get what you get with the amount of time that you invest, right? So be aware of that. And that's it. So you can ask all the questions that you want because I know that some of you are learning specifics that you want to talk about. But that gives you an overall idea of what you need to be doing right from the start and what to be thinking about before you even go to do any marketing. Make sure that your brand strategy is good. Make sure you've decided on what route you want to. Okay. So anybody have any questions? Yes. So how do you tackle marketing fatigue when doing marketing for like a year? There are multiple ways to do it, and again, it just depends what kind of game you're doing, right? So some people won't get bored of like an RPG that's 60 hours long that has tons of content and stuff to talk about. You have to really measure it carefully in terms of, you know, look at your game, look at what you're creating, look at what, and again, competitor and market analysis will really help inform you on this because if you're making a game that's a battle royale game, you can look at all the other battle royale games and kind of estimate how long they did their marketing campaigns for, right? Less is more in terms of PR. So major news beats are great. Keeping them 1 to 2 months apart is always nice. In terms of like the heavy advertising stuff, you don't need to do that until launch anyway, right? So you don't need to blast everyone in the face with your game until it's like a week out from launch. But before that, I would just say test the waters a little bit, right? And test on social media, test in the press. And if you get like bad reactions or something like that, then just adjust. And it's all, there's no perfect way to do it. It's just about kind of measuring as you go and seeing the response and then shifting direction depending on what the response is. Anybody else? Yes. How do you know when to market to the audience you're going for, depending on price and stuff? Um, well, it depends, right? So again, it depends on what type of game you've got. But you want to do community building from the start, right? And that will give being directly involved with the community, create a Discord, right, for like your most loyal fans, right? And that gives you a really good inclination of kind of if people are tired about stuff or not, right? And what you ideally want to do is you want to throw a snowball down a mountain and watch it roll and get bigger and bigger and bigger, culminating in the bigger snowball at launch, right? But it's super important to kind of, and again, a market analysis and a competitive analysis will really help inform some of those choices. But you really want to community build all throughout, regardless of when you start your PR and regardless of when you start your advertising and stuff. You need to be community building from day one because those are the people that day one when you launch are going to be going and buy your game and review it, right? And those are crucial. And don't give away free keys to those people, okay? But you're giving away free keys to the people who actually want to buy your game. Don't do that, okay? But yeah, I hope that helps. Anybody else? How would I adjust it for game-related services? It would depend, right? So you, again, start with who's your target audience, right? Where do they go? What media do they look at? What social media do they use? All of that helps inform everything else. So as soon as you know who your target customer is, you know where to go to reach that target customer. So that research is pretty much paramount in that regard. Anybody else? Some could do it, yeah. Some could market board games. Um, I would just pick carefully because you have to know. I would say this, right? Ask some very simple questions. Have you done a board game before? Is pretty much crucial, right? Do they like board games? Because if they just make sure that they know what they're doing, okay? And the steps to do, like you can ask them what kind of media will you target, and if they give you like a sample list, because no PR professional is going to give you like their actual mailing list. They give you a little sample list of the types of journalists they're going to contact and where those journalists are. If they kind of match up to what you were going to do, then you kind of got a good inclination that they know what they're doing. If they send you GameSpot for a board game, run away. Um, Anybody else? Yeah. Be super creative. If you're building a single player game or like a one-off six short experience, there's a way to create a community around that, right? But it's about being creative. I always gamify my clients' discords, right? So I make fun out of it. So like for example, if there's a game where there's like multiple factions, I have them as soon as people enter the Discord, I have them pick a role and pick a faction, and I make a game out of that. But then I also ask for like feedback and let them test. Let people run your beta through Discord, right? Because that gives them something to do, and then you can, run contests, do fun things, and just sit with them, right? And curating a community literally goes. It doesn't matter what product it is; it's just a different community, right? And you've just got to test things, right? Just because you get, it's okay to get it wrong, right? You don't have to be perfect every time. It's okay to make mistakes and do things, and people will leave and people will come, and it's just about finding that right balance. So I wouldn't worry if you're making like a single player experience. People like talking about single player games with each other. That's kind of like a fun thing to do. Anybody else? How do I measure if a game's good enough? Well, I'm a former reviewer, so I can tear it apart. Um, So it's one of those things that, me personally, I look at a game and I play it, right? So if you want to hire an agency, the first question that they ask is not, I want to play your game, and then they've got a problem. Um, what I look for is the quality of the mechanics, quality of the art, making sure that it's not like a Unity asset flip, um, and seeing if it's got an audience, right? Most games do have an audience, it just depends on what size. The quality of the game really comes down to the user experience, right? So am I going to jump into your game and not know what I'm doing, right? It has to be a smooth progress, and everything has to feel smooth. The controls have to feel intuitive, and I don't want to be button mashing and feel like nothing's happening on the screen. Um, so it's all about that experience, because you'd be surprised at how many games falter when they're actually good mechanically, but they don't have a good user experience. That's going to be super crucial in terms of how people perceive it as being good or bad. If it feels fluid, then that's great. And I think that's all we have time for. So I appreciate everybody coming. I will be around right after this, so if you have questions and you want to talk, I'll be here. All right. Thank you.